Hey guys, Jake Carlson here, host of the Modern Leadership Podcast. Are you ready to focus on amplifying your leadership superpowers? Let's go! Good morning, my friends and fellow elite achievers. Welcome to Modern Leadership, the podcast where each week we sit down with authors, entrepreneurs, and leaders to explore their journey, diving into the ups, their downs, and ultimately the lessons they learned along the way. Our goal, of course, is to show that everything is figure-outable. Today's guest expert is Eliot Marshall. If you follow MMA, then you know Eliot Marshall. If you have no idea what MMA is, you still need to know Eliot. He is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and former UFC light heavyweight fighter turned coach, author, speaker, and philanthropist. His newest book, the Amazon best-selling The Gospel of Fire, Strategies for Facing Your Fears, Confronting Your Fears, and Finding Your Purpose, is a deep dive into his personal story, the human experience, and how minds have the power to drive us to accomplish incredible things. Today, he is our modern leadership guest expert. Eliot, welcome.
Man, that was very nice of you, Jake. Expert, I'm not sure of. I'm a dude walking through the world, man. I'm a dude walking through the world.
Well, first off, congratulations on the best-selling book. And how have things been since the title published?
Man, they're good. I had a purpose for writing the book, so it was great to hit bestseller and all of those things. But I definitely hit my why for the book. So that was very good.
Well, do you mind sharing with us, what was kind of your mindset as you got into this process of writing? What was your goal as you went through the process?
Yeah, so I worked with this company called Scribe, where they do it for you, other than write the book. It's like an interview process, and they take you from start to finish. It takes 70 hours on the phone with them, basically. And look, that costs $25,000 to do it like that, and man, I don't have a business surrounding books, right? Like that's, so that chunk of change I was like, damn. And I was like, that's a lot. Like, how am I ever going to see my ROI? And then when you start adding things up, you're just not, right? So I had to change what ROI looked like. And for me, the ROI turned into, all right, man, well, I need to write a book that is so good and so open about my experience that one person, just one, reaches out to me and be like, yo, man, you changed my life. Like you changed my life. So that became the goal of the book. And man, I'm rich as hell.
Well, and I love to jump into this topic a little bit because you've gone on quite the journey in your life. Take us back. I've seen MMA on television. For those of our listeners who don't know really what it is, it's not boxing. Tell us what it is and how you got involved.
So I've been doing martial arts my whole life since I was 6 years old. And so this is, I guess, how I got involved first. And I always said, so then in the 1990s, the mid-1990s, the Gracie family, they had this art that they had created called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And they wanted to prove that it was the greatest martial art in the world. So they created this thing called the Ultimate Fighting Championship. And they did that. They did just that. They showed with one guy, 170-pound, one of the brothers soaking wet, took on all comers. And there was no rules at that time, and he won. He beat everybody with this one style, and that's how it started in the beginning. Was style versus style to prove what was the best style. And jiu-jitsu came out the winner, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And so, but then it morphed, right? It changed. It changed into who can fight the best, because now everyone's a black belt at everything. Right. So there's three dynamics here. We're talking about standing up, punching, kicking, elbows, knees, boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai. Right. We're talking about getting the fight to the mat or in the clinch area, which will involve wrestling and, again, a little bit of Muay Thai. And then we'll talk about mat work, which will be wrestling and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, maybe judo, other martial arts. So there's three areas. So who could do that the best? Who could combine everything? OK. And, so there's rules now. It's sanctioned by commissions.
And it's popular now. I mean, everybody knows about it. I doubt very few people listening right now have never heard of what we're talking about. But that background, that story is something we didn't know.
Right. So, yeah, that could be, yes. I mean, you have to be living under a rock maybe to not know have heard of it. Like, you don't have to be into it, obviously, but that is what I said when I was coming up doing karate for 20 years of my life, from the time I was 6 years old. That's what I said I was going to do to all, like, the kids in school and yada yada.
Well, let me ask you a little bit about that, because my understanding, and having not gone through my experience with karate, is the Karate Kid, Danielson. But my understanding is, as you were going up through this, it was more of a defense. It was more of this is an art form, almost an exercise. As we transition to some of these other things, the mindset changes. It's not so much about defense or a dance. It's more of I want to win, I want to conquer. Is that not? Do you see it that way?
Okay, so all of the martial arts individually are self-defense, right? But all of them, including karate, you can compete at. So if you want to compete at, now it's not so much defense anymore. It becomes, can I perform against the highest level of practitioner, with full resistance.
Yeah, so some of us, like us Karate Kid, grew up, in the 80s, and we watched Danielson, and this whole idea was, they were trying to score points, but it wasn't, we frowned on the sweep the leg guy, right? But now this MMA, at least my interpretation of it, how I've seen it, it becomes much more of like hey, I got to get this guy to the mat, and not just get him to the mat, but I'm going to continue to punch him until he taps out or the ref comes and pulls my arm away.
Well, you can win by knockout standing up, like looks like boxing and kickboxing. You can win by knockout on the ground, like once you get the person down and you can keep hitting them, and win by TKO or KO. And then you can also win by submission, and by applying a stranglehold or a joint manipulation till when the person either renders unconscious, which doesn't happen very often. Most people tap, right? Or they know that their arm is going to snap, or their ankle, their leg, whatever it may be. And
lose the fight than and be able to fight some more later.
Yeah, it just depends on the situation, right? If you're fighting for a world title, different stakes, right?
Well, I've often thought to myself, I watch some of these fights and I think, I'm a pretty tough guy. If I'm ever in a dark alley and somebody jumps out and spooks me, hey, I got this. But the reality is, Eliot, I think that I would cower and run. How do you develop this mindset where you're going to stand in the face of somebody really punching, kicking, dropping you, choking you, almost breaking your arm, and actually want to do this by choice?
Can I touch on what you said for a second ago about like somebody jumping out and saying that you got this? It's realizing that you don't got this. That's why you train, right? Because you are aware of how badly that can go. So I personally train, so I never have to really wonder, so that I don't ever have to, test my skills for real. I'll be ready, but I know how dangerous it is. I could lose. A trained fighter that I've been trained since I was 6 years old. Like, man, it's a dangerous thing, fighting. Now the second part of your question was, how do you prepare that mindset? Man, it's all about you. It's all about you dealing with you. You don't make it about the other person. But that's what everything in life is, right? Is how can you deal with yourself? And then how can you deal with yourself in such a great way that you can then go deal with other people really well too?
And I think that's a great comment that you just made, because now that you've kind of stepped in a different arena for MMA, where you do more coaching now, and you look at these young people coming up, and they may have talent in certain areas, like we talked about. They may be very good at some of the disciplines, but where do you start with as a coach in the mindset of getting a fighter ready to go in and basically do their job, which is go to work and win and succeed?
That's a long process. You have to break people mentally, a lot. People have to, you have to keep pushing the line a little bit, and you have to do it in a safe way so that they're not getting injured, as far as like preparing them. Now you have to have all the skills for them. And look, what it really comes down to, is you have to show people that you love and care about them, and you have their best interests. And when you do that, it's just like teaching a child, right? Like you can't teach a child anything if that child doesn't feel safe, first of all, and then doesn't feel loved and cared about. So it's no different than than with a professional fighter.
Well, and I think this goes to my next question. As you mentioned, they need to feel safe. Obviously, in a training situation, you don't want them to get injured. You don't want them to get hurt. How do you get somebody ready for a game time situation when they practice in a more safe environment?
The game has changed a little bit. Like back in my day, we played Rock'em Sock'em Robots a lot. We sparred a bunch. Now we controlled spar. We controlled drill. We practice situations. It looks more like a football practice where they don't put pads on and play football every day. They run the play and run the play and run the play and run the play. Do it again. So we do a lot of that. We do a lot of that. We add some conditioning, and look, obviously you have to fight. If you want to fight, if that's what you're doing, you got to fight to get ready to fight. So it's the risk we run.
There was this song that was popular when I was back in my high school days. Will Smith, actually, he was Fresh Prince the Fresh Prince and DJ Jazzy Jeff sang this song about, I think I can beat Mike Tyson. And there's this great line in there where he trains and he does all this stuff, and then he gets out in the ring, and the first time Mike hits him, his insides shook and he realized he was way out of his league. Does that happen with fighters today where, they train, they think mentally they're ready, they get in the ring, and it's different to be hit by somebody who's trying to beat you as opposed to somebody who's trying to train you to be better?
Look, man, Mike Tyson said it best. Everybody's got a plan until they get hit. So that's the best of the best. That's what you're talking about, right? Who can handle that pressure? Who can handle the stage? Who can handle the lights? Who can handle everything, the chaos of a fight? Because that's all it is. It's just chaos. And the amazingness of a fight, though, is that, man, you have never been more present in your life than when you're in that, when that cage door shuts and it's locked and it's you, the other dude, and the ref. You've never been more present. You're not thinking about anything, man. You're not thinking about the laundry, the kids, your girl, taxes, nothing.
So are you thinking at that time, I think my mindset would be stay alive, but I would imagine that the people you coach and the people that are really out there being champions, their mindset isn't stay alive. Their mindset is go out and do what they need to do to win.
Yeah, our mindset is do work, but the do work and be you, because you can't ask somebody to be better than themselves. That's just not possible, right? Like whatever your maximum potential is, then man, you want to try to reach your maximum potential. John Wooden said it best what success is. Success is being self-satisfied, that in the moment I gave my very best effort, and I paraphrase there a little bit, but it comes down to self-satisfaction and that did you do your best? Because you can't do LeBron James's best when you get on the basketball court, right? Because you can't do it.
Yeah, because and he brings his talents and background and experience and mindset, and you bring yours. So as you're training these young people, I imagine that they're balancing a lot of jobs, a lot of different things while they train, right? Because when you rise up through the ranks at the beginning, you're not making a lot of money. You're fighting a lot, but you're not making a lot.
Yeah, it sucks. It's very hard.
So how do you balance that?
You have to have the right team behind you. And you have to survive. You have to live. So, you drive Uber, you work at a bar, you teach martial arts at the schools. So yeah, it's a very, very hard thing. And man, fighting, we always say it. There's no play, man. Nobody says I play fight. You play football and you play baseball and you play basketball and you play every other sport in the world, but there's no play when it comes down to fighting.
So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about how your background in fighting and coaching has grown to the point where you learn these lessons that you lay out in the book. The idea behind the Gospel of Fire is strategies for facing your fears. So we all have fears. Maybe some of our fears are fears of public speaking or of messing up in front of the boardroom or whatever it may be. What are some of the strategies that we can use as business leaders that aren't going to be locked in a cage to face our fears?
Look, you just got to go do it. Just do it. Just do it over and over and over again. Make yourself walk the walk, right? Like pretend like it's a fight. Your music comes on and they say, roll to the hole. So you roll, right? And you just get better at it over and over. And then look, all you're trying to do is you're trying to gain information. Right. So we're talking about, so those things that you just mentioned, those aren't like major fears. Those are minor fears.
So what would be a major fear?
We'll talk about it. Like, for example, right now, we talked about it in the beginning. I have a concussion currently, and I am an anxiety sufferer. And the symptoms go very closely together, right? The symptoms of concussion and what anxiety feels like, the experience of anxiety, they're the same. You're dizzy, you have vertigo, you're cognitively not all together. So right now, like today, I'm not my best. I've had a very tough couple days, and the hook of anxiety is with me right now.
You're facing this anxiety, you're facing this concussion, yet you're on this podcast. So tell us about that, the lesson to learn from that.
So the lesson to learn, now look, this one's a little tricky because of the concussion thing. If it were just anxiety, so the concussion thing makes it difficult because there might really be something wrong with me, right? Well, there is. So it's hard to play this balance because normally, look, if it were just anxiety, if I was just, and my fear is that I don't sleep. So like last night, I got an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours of sleep, and that ended at 12:45. So I've been up since 12:45.
And for those listening, just to know, we're at the end of the day. I mean, it's been a full day. This isn't like we're talking 8 a.m.
No. And this is my second podcast. So I had one to do, and then I canceled everything in the middle of the night. I canceled everything, not you, but I canceled everything else in my day. And then at 5 o'clock when I got up, I was like, I can't let the anxiety win. I feel this devil. I feel it. I feel it to my bones. I'm shaking a little bit, like I don't feel good, like I sweat and then I get cold, and that's just the beast. That's the devil with me right now, I like to say, and I can't let him win, man. I can't let him win. So I rescheduled my day. I said nope. I sent everybody everything I canceled, except for I normally teach tonight, and I'm not going to teach tonight because that might be affecting my concussion late in the day. Headache, loud place, so I have to be careful. And this is the demon that I'm dancing with that's a little more difficult because normally if it were just anxiety, I'd be teaching. I'd make myself teach. And then look, God, this is so hard, man. I'm scared of it. I'm petrified of it right now. But my plan for tonight has to be that I'm not going to sleep again.
How do you make tomorrow a beneficial day? Like, how do you push through this? I mean, this isn't something you chose. This isn't something going on necessarily inside you. This is physical. Yeah,
it's terrible. How do I make it beneficial? I don't know, man. I'll let you know when I get there. I'm not worried about tomorrow. I'm petrified of tomorrow, but we'll see.
Well, and that's kind of what we're talking about, right? I mean, we're talking about the gospel of fire being facing your fears, confronting your fears. But now let's go to that third step, and that is finding your purpose. So you've done a lot of things in your life, and you've had some success. You've been on television, you're coaching, you've seen some wins in the ring, you've seen some not wins in the ring. And here you are teaching us as followers of the podcast, how do we find our passion, and what does that really mean?
For sure. Man, I'll be super honest. I kind of have imposter syndrome today a little bit with this,
Yeah.
Just because I'm like, man, who the hell am I? Right. Like I'm sitting, I was crying on the phone with my friend an hour ago because I cracked, 2 hours ago and I got it together. It ended, and I told him I'm super embarrassed. I feel like an imposter, but what I do, man, is I just try to help everyone find their power. And right now I'm trying to find mine. So that's just what it is. You try to find your power and you keep marching. You just put one foot in front of the other and you march, you walk to the cage.
I was watching and listening to this podcast earlier this week with a podcast guest who was talking about the generosity of scars and scars in life and what they give to us. And he was really talking about storytelling. And one of the things he talked about was just the power of, he didn't like to use the word vulnerability because he thinks it's overplayed a little bit, or authenticity. We hear it so much. But what he talked about was relatability. And I think what you're doing right now, Eliot, is massively relatable to us. Now, maybe we don't relate to having a concussion and being kicked around and being in a position physically, but we can all relate to what it's like to have imposter syndrome, right? What it's like to have a great week, be standing on top of the mountain, and the very next week being wondering, what are we going to do next? How are we going to overcome this? But you mentioned something in your example, in your story there, that I think is really important for the audience. And that is, you were on the phone an hour ago with a support network. you have a friend, a mentor, somebody you can reach out to. And I want to have you talk for a minute just about the importance of having those you can reach out to, whether it's coaches, mentors, friends, whatever it may be.
Yeah. So I called all my friends today, man, that I'm super close with. And I was like, yo, I'm stuck. I'm stuck, guys. I'm going to need some help. I'm going to need some help. And that help might be because, like I describe in my book, we might be back here. We might be back at 2 a.m. on the phone, all night long. So.
And what can a friend or mentor say back to you that can help you in that moment? Is there anything they can say, or is it just a matter of listening?
They say, I love you. They say, I love you, and we got this, and you'll never be alone, because that's everyone's biggest fear, right? Everyone's biggest fear is that you're going to be left alone in the worst situation possible. And I am currently afraid of that, but I know that won't be the truth because my friends got me.
Yeah, there's this saying that I used to hear quite a bit. In fact, it's the title of a book by Harvey Mackay that says, dig your well before you're thirsty. Meaning, you don't wait until you're, at the end of the road and then say, oh, I need to dig a well. You start digging today. And what I think you're saying, Eliot, is we build friendships, we build relationships, we build trust because, we don't know that tomorrow we may be the one that's facing imposter syndrome. Tomorrow we may be the one that's down and we need to be lifted up. But today we dig our well, we reach out to our friends, we build associations, and we help them. And it's almost a reciprocal relationship, is it not?
Yeah, man. I don't believe. So I own martial arts schools. That's what I do for a living, right? I'm not in the martial arts business. I'm in the people business. I'm in the business of making the most amazing community of people that is possible, and that's the goal. We have like my students tonight that I'm missing out on. Man, they're my people. They saved my life once before, and they'll probably, we might be heading down the road of them having to do it again here. And if that's what it is, that's what it is. But man, that's what you got to do. You have to make a community of people, a real community, not fake ones, not on social media, like a real community when people know that you'll be there for them and they'll be there for you in their darkest moments.
And I think that starts with being there for them first, right? I mean, we can't necessarily take before we offer, especially when it comes to a friendship. We want to be there and be available for them in the beginning. That's part of the digging the well that we talked about, is it not?
Yeah, it's just showing up. It's just showing up. Just do it. Be impeccable with your word. And then do your very best. Say what you mean what you say, and then show up for people. Like really, really show up for people. For me, I had to switch the way that I saw my class, because I teach, I teach a lot of classes, and look, you said it, right? I fought in the UFC. I'm a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu champion. I've done all these things, right? Which most people probably, even my students, they haven't done. So how is it? Is it that they're the ones that are privileged to learn from me? And man, that's how, maybe that's even how I saw it for a long time. But I had to switch that, and I wholeheartedly disagree with that. Now, I don't believe that. I am the one that's privileged that my students show up to take my class, because the greatest asset that we have in this world is time, and it's finite, and you don't know how much you have. It's not like for example, money. Sure, they all pay to come, right? And you go, oh, money, blah, blah, blah. But it's not money, because you can figure out ways to make more of it. It's not finite. And you can look at your bank account and you can see exactly what's in there, right? You have no clue when your time runs out. So the fact that anybody in the whole world would choose to spend an hour to an hour and a half with me, and because I'm teaching, man, I'm the most privileged dude in the world.
That's such a great perspective, Eliot, and I really appreciate you sharing it. One of the things that's really been important and powerful during this podcast is just your openness. Like we talked about a few minutes ago, your relatability is just so high. And I don't know that I went into this interview, and I don't know that very many people who clicked on this episode of the podcast came into it thinking, hey, we're going to listen to a guy who's gets into a locked cage and pounds on each other, and he's going to come and talk to us about being open and being vulnerable, being relatable, saying the words I love you to your friends, and being there as a shoulder for them when they need it. And I appreciate you bringing that to the table. Before we shift gears and jump to the last section of the podcast, I wanted to ask you, if we open up Gospel of Fire and we want to pull something out, teach us on one thing from that book. What's something that we should take away from Gospel of Fire?
Can I give you two things?
Absolutely.
One, life is a fight. Everyone's fighting something, So learn how to fight. Those skills they'll never let you down. They'll never let you down. And then can I just grab a copy real fast?
Of course.
This is just the beginning of the book, like I guess the foreword maybe, right? To everyone who is struggling, please know that you are not alone. Know that someone else is out there struggling just like you. Know that you will get through this and you have the ability to find greatness. I know this sounds impossible. Find one thing in your life to be grateful for and focus on that. I promise you'll find another and then another. After you have 3 things, go make someone else feel grateful. Go make someone else grateful for something. Then you'll have 4 things for yourself. Just do that again and again. To those of you who are not struggling, realize how blessed and lucky you are. Realize that you now have one job and one job alone. Go sprinkle some of that luck dust on someone else who isn't so lucky. Find someone whose life you can make better. Don't tell them what to do. Bring them along with you and show them exactly how to do it. You will become even more blessed and more lucky.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's such wise words. And I think, for both of us right now, those are the words we needed to hear today. And for those listening, those are the words that you needed to hear. I think everything happens for a reason, and you found this podcast for a reason. Eliot, I love this conversation. Thank you for being so relatable. At this point, I'd love to shift gears and ask you the 4 final questions, how we end every episode of the podcast. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. The first question is, the book currently on your Kindle or bedside table, what are you reading these days?
So I just got done, actually, this book called The 4 Agreements.
Tell us about the 4 agreements for those who haven't read it.
The 4 agreements is super simple. You got to make 4 agreements with yourself. 1, you're going to be impeccable with your word. And first, that's going to come to the words that you say to and about yourself. 2, you have to don't take anything personally. 3, make no assumptions. And 4, always do your best.
I worked for a coaching company for a number of years, and that was required reading, not just for the coaches, but for the members that we coached. That book, we had to read it before we would even engage in coaching because it's so vitally important that you make these 4 agreements with yourself. Our second question is your leadership superpower.
My leadership superpower. You'll never not hear me. If you need to hear me, I have a very loud and projecting voice that is very, very clear. So, if I'm in the room, you'll never feel alone.
And when you leave the room, we'll still hear you because of the impact that you've had on us. Our third question then is a motivational philosophy quote or mantra that you live by.
The impediment of action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Marcus Aurelius. The obstacle is the way.
Our final question then is the book that you most often recommend for other people to pick up and read a copy.
So I'm not a religious person, but I really greatly understand spirituality. I greatly understand the need for the religious texts, and I'm very spiritual. So I like to break things down into the Old Testament and the New Testament. And for me, the Old Testament is the untethered soul, and the New Testament is The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday.
All right, Eliot, I appreciate you coming on the show and talking about so much. You bring so much for us to take away and think about. Before we let you go, any last bit of advice, and how can we pick up a copy of The Gospel of Fire?
So I also have a podcast by the same name, The Gospel of Fire. So if you want to tune in, that's on everywhere where you listen to podcasts. The book is still out on Amazon, so you can grab a copy there if you would like. And man, just know the one thing, you can do it, guys, girls, everybody. That look, it's so simple. It's so simple. It's not easy. It's not easy at all. This thing that we call life. But it is very simple. And, go find people that you connect with and make their life better.
And I think those are great wisdom words for us to close this podcast. Eliot, thank you for being this week's Modern Leadership guest expert. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Jake, thanks a lot, man.
All right, my friends. That was different. That was a different type of podcast than we have on this show. And I got to tell you, I loved it. I love diving in with someone who's real. I mean, boots on the ground, just totally open and authentic, really relatable. That was the word that kept going through my mind this whole episode is, I don't know if I can relate to being in a locked cage, getting my face punched. But I can relate to the imposter syndrome. I can relate to being on top of the world and then feeling like the next day I can't sleep, I've got anxiety, I'm a little bit dizzy. I do think I can relate to that. And so I appreciate Eliot coming on. I thought it was a great episode. Of course, everything that we talked about on this episode can be found at jakeacarlson.com/ML172, episode 172. And until next week, I want to wish you the very best of days, an even better life. And remember, everything is figure-outable. Thanks for listening to the Modern Leadership Podcast. You can find me on Facebook at Speaker Jake, on Twitter at Jake A. Carlson, and of course the website, jakeacarlson.com. See you there.